What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Monster, the new film from Hirokazu Kore-eda. Koreeda, of course, the esteemed Japanese filmmaker, returning to a film set in Japan after making two films elsewhere. Of course, his last film set in Japan, Shoplifters, one of the most heralded films of the late 2010s. Koreeda's Monster, this premiered back at Cannes earlier this year and released back in June in Japan, and it has a limited release about to come out this fall, and it'll expand throughout the year and into the new year here in the US. I was lucky enough to see Monster early pre-release at the Independent Film Festival of Boston. Of course, I was happy to do so because I adore Shoplifters. I also loved Koreeda's last movie, the Korean movie Broker, that came out just last year. And in general, I think he kind of goes without saying. He's one of the most esteemed filmmakers working in international cinema these days. And Monster, this is Koreeda's first time directing a film from someone else's script, a script he didn't write. First time doing that since 1995. And yeah, this is, I think, a really impressive movie. I went in pretty much blind. I didn't really know what to expect. I'm not going to spoil anything here because it's pre-release, but Monster, I think it's incredibly compelling, incredibly well done, really dynamite screenplay. And what makes it so special is the structure of the script. It's really kind of three core parts here, but it's been, compared to Kurosawa's Rashomon pretty liberally at this point. And that would be, of course, because it's an unreliable narrator type situation where our point of view, the point of reference for the audience, continues to change, where our assumptions and feelings about characters and situations in the film, those things change. What we thought we knew, what we thought we believed, those things evolve as we learn more information about the story, as we revisit scenes and revisit plots from different characters' perspective as the structure of the story continues. I think it's a really fun way to frame something when you can nail it the way something like Monster does. It's definitely a movie that will leave you sitting with, I think the lasting, scene or so. And to me, I was definitely thinking about like, wow, what is this actually about? Because it takes a while to progress to where it goes. And I think it kind of really nice, beautiful build up as a movie. The story is set in modern day Japan at I believe it's unnamed, like kind of lakeside city. And we're introduced to Minato, this young boy played by Soyo Kurokawa. And we also meet his youngish mother, Sayori, played by Sakura Andō from Shoplifters. And she's a single mom. Minato's father has passed. And she notices something's kind of off with Minato. He seems to be acting differently. She catches him cutting his hair in the bathroom. Seems to be a bit detached, and she doesn't really know what's going on. She kind of has her suspicions, but she's not really sure. And eventually she comes to suspect something's going on at school, and she may be being, or Minato may be facing some kind of abuse at school, and it seems to be coming from Mr. Hori, played by Ita Magayama, Minato's teacher at school, bullying, physically abusing Minato at school. And Sayori goes to the school to complain, to raise a stink about what's happening to her kid at the school. And she complains to their teachers and the principal, and they offer her kind of apologies and very apologetic bows and assurances that it won't happen again, any misunderstandings. And they're kind of like yada yadaing and yesing her to death. And it's very frustrating as a viewer when you watch this happen. But of course, if that was all this movie was about, it probably wouldn't have such a applauditory screenplay, right? And of course, that's not all it's about. We quickly have another take at how the story went in Act 2, where we get Hori's perspective, the teacher's perspective. We come to really change our opinion, our perspective on this character. This will happen a few other times with a few other characters. Another really important figure in this would be Iri, a fellow student in Minato's class, played by Hinata Hiragi. And their relationship, both publicly at school, privately when they're hanging out, like the way home from school, how those two things are very different from one another, that increasingly becomes the core aspect of Monster. And it's a movie that ultimately is about, I think, connection as well as how you, I guess, kind of feel in society and what connection and rejection can can mean and treat each other. These are two adolescent kids, both from single parent homes as well, that seemingly aren't fitting in to the reactionary world that they are in. And I think it's really fun to just kind of sit with that as it progresses, because again, the onion continues to be peeled with the monster screenplay, and the true interests of the movie eventually become more clear. If I had one criticism, it's that Sayori is not really in the movie too much. Sakura Andō, amazing in Shoplifter, is probably the breakout actor in the movie, and she is really kind of only in the first half in a meaningful way of Monster as the screenplay continues to progress. And I guess that was going to happen with the way the screenplay is structured. It's ultimately about the kids, not about the mom, but it did feel like some things were kind of dropped and other things were, the kids' relationship was the main thing here. Really cool visuals as well. There's an abandoned train car on an abandoned railroad outside of town, and that the tunnel they walk in to get there. That's pretty cool. There's a common framing device throughout the structures of all the acts where we see this arson happening to a hostess bar, and the identity of the arsonist is kind of one of those other plot points that's initially introduced to the story. There's like something like you hear a trombone instrument noise at the school in like Act 2. You don't think much of it, which is kind of a weird noise, but we eventually learn the identity of who's playing that instrument, what that scene means, and it gives so much more extra, I think, detail and meaning to the story. But yeah, I was just quite impressed with how my initial read on characters and on situations, due to manipulation by the screenplay, but regardless, how those things were changed. Because I initially was not really liking being with Minato as a character, this young boy. Sometimes child acting performances can be challenging. The kids are great as actors in this movie, but also like you come to have a greater, I don't say appreciation, but understanding of that Minato character. And it kind of, I think the message of Monster as a movie is experienced kind of in real time by the viewer as your judgments and your preconceived notions of what you're seeing get challenged and eventually kind of shot down as the screenplay changes. To some people, maybe that can be described as manipulative, but to me, I think Monster really kind of nails where it's going. And I don't want to kind of like reveal like the final quote unquote like meaning or twist or anything like that. I didn't really see it coming per se, but I was starting to think about it before it happened, so it didn't completely come out of nowhere for me. But yeah, I think Monster, at the very least, it's another great entry in Kore-eda's filmography. Makes a lot of sense, the type of filmmaker he is. These are the kind of stories he likes to tell. But I was really quite impressed with the, I think, feeling and effectiveness that the storytelling has on the viewer and how that changes throughout the progress of the script. So even if it's not a complete like Rashomon story, it's not quite that like cylindrical and like perfect as like a flipping script. Still pretty cool influence. But yeah, that's Monster, which is coming out again limited release in the US later in the year. Let me know how'd you feel about the movie, and for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.